Okay, welcome Sean and welcome Linda, and hopefully we'll get a few more logging in. This is actually the very last webinar of the entire quarter. So really important. We're going to be doing a little of chapter 13. We don't get into all of chapter 13 in this class, just a tiny bit. I try to keep it standard and find out what everyone else is doing in the state and teach the same stuff. So again, we just do a little of chapter 13. And then I'll spend the rest of the time talking about the final exam that's coming up. So Linda or Sean, any questions before I get moving?
Nope.
No. Okay, let me talk about chapter 13, which is it's the very last hypothesis test we have in this class. In fact, it's really the very last thing we do in this class. Chapter 13 is, especially ANOVA is what we're going to be doing from this, is something we have not looked at before. We have talked about how do you compare a mean, how do you compare two population means, how do you compare a population proportion, how do you compare two population proportions. We've talked about looking at regression analysis to find out if things are correlated. We've talked about chi-squared, goodness of fit, so that's the qualitative stuff. Today what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the one thing that we've not looked at yet, and that is how do you make a comparison of many means. So we want to find out if we have several means, we want to find out if they're all the same or they're all different. So first thing, if you talk about means, are we talking about quantitative or qualitative?
It's quantity.
Any thoughts?
Quantitative?
Yeah, quantitative. Because if you talk about proportion, it's a yes, no. If you talk about means, it's quantitative. So we're going to be looking at a quantitative survey question, typically that's asked of many people, or many types of people, or many groups of things, to see if there's a difference in the proportion for each of the different groups. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me do it by example. Again, we're not going to spend much time on this chapter because I want to spend some significant time on the test. So let's take a look at, see what we've got. And I need to share my desktop. Okay, so here it is. Okay, suppose that a study was done to analyze the racial differences for the distance in miles that people live from the nearest public library. Kind of a typical thing that people will study is they want to find out, is there a difference, in race? Is there, white privilege, or maybe there's Hispanic privilege or black privilege or other privilege, something like that. Okay, and I just want to let you know I made up these numbers, whatever they are, they are. But a study like this definitely could be done. Okay, and I want to let you know something else is that these sample sizes are all small, and that's kind of the class. I don't want to overwhelm you with huge data sets. But in the real world, you don't ever use a data set of size 4. That's a really big mistake. So you need large. Okay, so in terms of this, there's some questions that I have here. And the first is, what assumptions must you make in order to perform an ANOVA test? So first thing, and you may or may not realize, is that ANOVA stands for something. And what it stands for is analysis of variance. Let me write that in. I think it's important. Oh, too big. Just a minute. Get all this over here. .14 font. Analysis of variance is what ANOVA stands for. So a couple things. ANOVA is analysis of variance, and it's kind of weird that what we're looking at is to see if these population means are the same. It doesn't feel like we're analyzing variances at all. This is one of those where you just have to trust me that the deep math in the background is all about variances. but when you're done, you talk about means. So sorry if that's confusing, but don't shoot the messenger. I'm just giving you the name of this thing. I think analysis of means would make, analysis of multiple means would make a lot more sense, but it's not what they call it. So what assumptions must you make in order to perform an ANOVA test? So the first thing, it's a typical assumption, or a typical requirement is another way of saying it, for pretty much every test that we do. And what is that? See if you can tell me or put in the chat box. So what's a typical thing that you must make sure of for any study you do? Okay, sample size. Sample size is technical though. You know, sometimes it depends on the type of sample and stuff like that. But what do we do before we even talked about sample size? Very beginning of the class. We've been doing it since. Can you remember? I don't see you all jumping in. Yeah, type of survey or type of sampling is the right word.
Okay, sorry.
And that's probably what you meant?
Yes.
Yeah, so the first thing is we have to make sure that we have a good scientific study, and I'm just going to write down the standard. One is we used simple random sampling, or at least scientific surveying. Sampling technique. Any questions on that? Okay, another one that we have seen kind of over and over again is, any thoughts?
Are you
Something
talking about
that must be true for each white, black, Hispanic, and other for their data.
normal distribution?
Yeah, normal distribution. So the sampling distribution for each population must be normal. I'm going to write approximately normal because you don't get exact of anything. You never get exact. And we have seen, by the way, and this is something you mentioned at the very beginning when I asked, is one way of ensuring that the sampling distribution is approximately normal is by having a sample size of greater than 30. So hopefully you all remember that because that's important. So in particular for this study, we're going to have 30 whites, 30 black, over 30 whites, over 30 blacks, over 30 Hispanics, and over 30 others. And that it adds up fast, by the way, because now we're talking about well over 100. So, you know, we're talking about 104 at least would be the very minimum. So ANOVA is actually hard to use. It takes a lot of work because you typically have to get large sample sizes. What they have found when they did what's called meta-studies, which is studies of studies, is that most social scientists do it wrong. It's kind of sad. I think it was 80% is the number I saw, that they have a flawed study. And the flaw is typically in this sampling distribution being normal. They don't have a large enough sample size for each of the types of populations. That's a typical one. But there's others. Another one which we haven't seen before is that in order to perform ANOVA, you must have equal standard deviations. Or close to equal, or not too far.
What is not too far?
Okay, so one of the things I'm going to mention is I'm going to remind you the title of this class. Do you remember what the title of the class is?
Elementary.
Elementary statistics. So guess what you have to do if you want to answer the question to what is not too far?
Go back to grade school?
No. You need to take advanced statistics. So that, and we don't teach at the community college level. I took the class, I know it, but again, that's the kind of thing where you need to have advanced statistics to really understand. And in fact, a big disclaimer about ANOVA is by the end of this, you're not really going to know how to do ANOVA. You're just going to have some hints about ANOVA because, again, there's questions like what is not too far apart, what is approximately normal, how close to normally mean, how do you find out if it's normal? The whole 30 is just something I've been using in the class. It's kind of standard for elementary stats classes, but it's actually deeper than that. Okay, even that, but we keep it elementary, so we have to have some kind of standard. Otherwise, this class would be much harder than it is, and it's already a hard class. And my guess is you don't want it to be much harder. I think I wouldn't have anyone left by the end. So, sorry about that. But again, maybe it'll get you excited about taking a, upper division level statistics class. Okay, but there's more. So not only must we have these, but we have to make sure that the samples are independent. That's usually pretty easy to do. If you're doing a study like this, if you're doing a telephone survey, the last person you asked is going to have no idea what the person before said. So you don't have any kind of groupthink, but this isn't going to be a paired sample. You're not going to ask the same person 5 questions and compare. To do that, as I mentioned, you need advanced statistics. Any questions so far? So independent happens when you have separate populations and you make sure they don't hear each other. And then there's a fifth. The fifth is pretty easy. You just have to be careful. And that is all the populations are surveyed in the same way. So kind of the easiest way to describe what that means is, let's suppose instead of this particular question, let's suppose you wanted to find out if students, the average number of students for the amount of time they study is the same for all of the 50 states in the United States. So the first thing you wouldn't do, because it's too hard, would be to kind of perform the data collection all by yourself. Way too much traveling, it would be a mess. So you'd have to have the different person in every state do the sample collection. So you just have to make sure that each of the people, each person in each of the states that's doing the sampling is asking the same survey question, using the same rules. Everything needs to be the same process. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's easy. You just got to make sure that you have a meeting at the beginning to talk to everyone who's doing it. Any questions at all on these guys? Okay, so now the next question is, show all the details of the ANOVA and state your conclusion in the context of the study. Oops. There we go.
Telephone number or something? Okay, yes. I give you permission.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Carol Salsley. Am I speaking to the same person?
I'm going to mute you, Linda. So you can unmute yourself when you're done on the conversation. So anyhow, now we want to do ANOVA. And this is a hypothesis test. And when you have a hypothesis test, by now you better know that hypothesis tests always have, let me make this bigger so I have a place to write, always have an H naught and an H1. You should know that. So let's work those out. And this is a little different than what we've seen before. So if you remember from chapters 9 and 10, the H naught and H1 were always symbols. For chapter 11, H naught and H1 were words. I don't know if you remember that. So chapter 9 was like mu1 equals was like mu1 is less than 3. And chapter 10 was like mu1 is less than mu2. Chapter 11 was this group is independent of this other group. Okay? So words. Here, we're going to do one of each. So let me show you. So we're going to have H naught. So in this case, symbols for H naught. So let me go to brush. See how this looks. So it's going to be mu1 equals mu2 equals, how many do we have here?
4.
Yeah, we had 4. We had whites, blacks, Hispanics, and other. And if you want to put mu W equals mu B equals mu H equals mu other, that's fine too. Okay, that's a more a stylistic thing. Mu3 equals mu4. Any questions on that? All right, now this is a little bit tricky sounding, but what is the opposite? Okay, remember H naught and H1 are opposing each other. What is the opposition to all of the means are the same? Any thoughts? Put in your chat box or say it.
That they're different?
Okay, this is where you gotta be careful. All of the means are different is not the opposite of all the means are the same. It feels like it until you think about it for a while. For example, you could have mu1 and mu2 be the same, and maybe even mu3 be the same, but maybe mu4 is not the same as the others. Do you see? So you can't just say all of them are different. You just need to have some of them different. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So H1, I'm going to write in words because it's easier to write that way. And that is at least 2 of the population means distances from the library differ. So if 2 of them differ, they're not all the same. Does that make sense? So maybe, for example, maybe blacks and Hispanics have the same distance from the library, but maybe the whites are not the same. Does that make sense? You could say at least one is different from another. That's the same thing as saying at least 2 are different from each other. Does that make sense, Linda?
No, why couldn't you have 1 of the 4?
Huh?
1 is different than the 4.
Right, if 1 are different than the other 3, you mean, right?
Correct, yeah.
Let's say number 4 was different than 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Well, then 3 and 4 are different from each other, right?
Mm-hmm. So 1 is different than the other 3.
Right, you could say 1, but it doesn't have to be different than all of them. It could be this, there could be 1 and 2 the same, and 3 and 4 the same.
Okay.
And that's not all the same, right?
Okay.
So the easiest way of describing it is that at least 2 of them are different from each other.
Okay.
Does that make some sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it takes a while to kind of catch the logic, but this is definitely logic.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing we do is what you're all used to doing. What do you typically do after you state your null and alternative hypothesis? Let's suppose we'll use a 0.05, the standard for level significance. What's next? This you should all know.
You're going to put it in the stat list.
Go to your calculator, yeah. So I need to get to my calculator. And let me do that. Okay, so here's the calculator. And what we're going to do, and you're used to this, let me clear everything. I'm going to hit stat. hit edit. I'm going to clear out what I had before in L2. I'm going to clear out what I had before in L1. And then I'm just going to type in the numbers. So for whites, we had 15, 15, and then 4, and then 11, and then 9, and 3, and 2. For L2, we had 12, 1, 6, and 6. For L3, we had 9, 17, 5, 14, 7, and 1. And for other, we had 18.
14.
Did I type one in wrong? Let's see.
14.
Yep. I hit the 14, but it didn't register.
Sorry.
Doesn't like my 4. There we go. Got to really pound it for this particular keyboard. Okay, for 18, I get 11. So I'll be real careful. There's no more 4s. That's good. 2 and 8. Any questions so far? Notice you don't have to have them all the same sample size. That's not important. We've seen that pretty much throughout, is that when you're doing a comparison study, if they're independent samples, they don't have to be the same sample size. Then I go to stat. This is a really easy test, by the way, to get to use. We get a test, and you definitely want to use the up arrow, not the down arrow, because there it is. This test looks very different than the rest of them. So I'm going to hit enter on ANOVA. Any questions so far? Then I'm going to type in L1, so second 1, comma, second 2, comma, second 3, comma, second 4. Close the paren. Okay, and the good news is all calculators, all the TIs have this particular TI, at least all the TI 83s and 4s have ANOVA. Okay, I also have it on my spreadsheet too if you want to use that, but that won't work on the exam. It only works on homework. Then I hit enter, and there we go. Something you might notice is the test statistic is F. So we have seen a lot of different test statistics. We've seen Z for normal. We've seen T for student's T test. We have seen chi-squared. Do you remember that? For like distribution being different for the chi-squared good as a fit or homogeneity or independence. And now we're seeing F. F is another, it's another test statistic. There is some very deep math behind all of these, which I'm just shoving under the carpet. Again, if you want to learn that, you need to be a math major, a statistics major in the math department, and you can learn the deep math. But this class is elementary stats, so I'm just going to tell you that we have a difference distribution. It's called the F distribution. More importantly, we have the p-value. P is 0.38 about, 0.3806 if they ask for 4 decimals. Okay, there's a bunch of other things. We're not going to do them. There's DF and SS and MS and DF, et cetera, et cetera. You hit the down there, you'll get more. It's a p-value that's the most important. F, I may ask you for the test statistic, and that means you write F equals 1.09. Any questions on that? So the p-value is 0.38 approximately. I'm going to go 2 decimals. And let me find it. There it is. Let me go back to the desk paint. So we had our p-value is 0.38. Okay, and there are a few ways of stating the conclusion. I think I'm going to give both to you because they're both important. One is just kind of restating H1 and saying it's not true? So so is it statistically significant or statistically insignificant? What do you guys think? This you should all know. You don't need to know chapter 13. We've been doing this for a while now.
You're going to fail to reject it, correct? So it's insignificant.
Yeah, we fail to reject. P is 0.38. Okay, that's bigger than any level of significance you'd ever use. So we fail to reject, so it's statistically insignificant. So there is statistically insignificant evidence to make a conclusion about whether or not at least two of the population mean distances differ from the library differ. Any questions on that? There's another way of saying the same thing, which I want to include because you'll see it a lot. And that is, still there is statistically significant evidence. To make a conclusion about whether or not and what we say is race is a factor in distance from the library. And that's another way of saying it, is we say, is this a factor in the other thing? And the ANOVA test tells you, yes, it's a factor, no, we don't know if it's a factor. And in this case, we don't know if it's a factor. Okay, the races may all be the same in terms of distance from the library, or maybe not. Any questions on this test? Any questions? I want to make a point that's important, and that is this test is just a first step. And in our class, we're not doing the rest of the steps. As I mentioned, you're not going to learn everything you need to know about ANOVA in a half an hour. So typically, if you reject the null hypothesis, then you can say that race is a factor in distance from the library, but you might be more interested in saying which race is the one that's different. Does that make sense? Which is the culprit in making them not all the same? And there's another test to do that called a Tukey analysis, which we're not doing. But the point is that there are tests for everything. There is even a test for number 2 on our list of assumptions needed. And that is a test to see if you have many population means, are they all approximately normal or not? Okay, and that's another one. It's called Kolmogorov test for normality. That there's, again, tests for everything. And if you, for example, go on to graduate school, you're going to take another statistics class. Okay, then you'll take an advanced statistics class that you'll learn some of the more advanced tests to see how do you go further when you have a rejection for this one, for example. Or if you're missing the assumption of normality, then what do you do? There's a test for that too, that if you don't have a normal distribution, well, then there's a different test that you can use. Okay, so there's tests for everything, and we're not doing them, but I figure I should mention them, kind of advertise that taking another class, if you want to be a researcher in something, then it's a good idea to take another stats class. I can't do everything, okay, and I'm not supposed to in an elementary stats class. No one really complains that our class is light and fluffy and we never do anything. I never get that from people. Okay? People say there's a lot of work in this class. That's what I get. And probably you all agree. Maybe not, but my guess is you agree. Okay, so that's all I have to say about anything really in terms of news statistics. We're done with the class. Okay, so what's left? Since it's 6:30 and we still have some time.
Review for the test.
Yeah, we got to talk about the final exam. Okay, so in terms of the final exam, the good news is it's not very hard to understand the rules because they're exactly the same as midterm. So you get 2 hours. You bring a pencil or pen or both. You could bring blank paper to, for extra writing if you want to. You definitely need your calculator. I'm sure you get that now. If you don't have a calculator, it'll be a fail. It'll be a fail. You just can't do this without a calculator. None of this stuff. So all the rules are the same. You need to have a proctor. You're welcome to use the same proctor. That's fine. You just have to let me know. And if you just email me saying same proctor as a midterm, that's good enough. Then I'll make it happen. The date at which you have to take the test is it has to be taken by Wednesday. I've had a couple requests to take it tomorrow. You could do that, but you better have been studying already, or you probably aren't ready. That's the problem with taking it tomorrow. So I have it written. It's, like I said, it is right here. It's written. I have a key. I've even sent it out to some of the proctors. But I recommend spending some days studying for this final instead of rushing and trying to take it tomorrow. So that's a big, big recommendation. Any questions on the rules and policies before I go into what it covers? Okay, and just a note, since I'm not hearing any questions, my plan is, if I can, grade it Thursday. So I do not procrastinate. I get things done. Your projects, by the way, those take longer because they're like 12 pages long. I can't do that in a half an hour. So that's going to take a few days for me to get through all the project. I'm going to do my best tomorrow. I have a lot of the day set to work on your projects, and also your. I usually do your discussion assignments from last week first, and then do the projects. So I'll be working on that tomorrow, and then if I don't finish. Wednesday's a busy day, but Thursday I should finish your projects and your discussion post assignments. I usually do discussion post assignments first because those are low stakes. I can just get it done with. And I've done a couple of them, but Monday's my busiest day. So that's just a note in terms of when that's going to be done. And then I'll have your grade ready by the end of the week next week. Okay, you probably won't be able to see it until our admissions department releases it, and I'm not sure when they'll be done. Might be another 5 days after that, but at least I'll know your grade, and I'll send it to our admissions and records group. So, any questions on just that piece? If you don't take the final, it's over for you. So you need to take the final. Okay, that's just a note. It's a big part of your grade. You won't pass this class if you don't take the final. So please take your final, especially if you've been working all quarter. All right, so I want to unshare this. And then let me put this in here. And let me share. In fact, let me go to the home page. Then you'll see what it looks like.
Should we do the secret word first?
I might do it at the end.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'll do it now if you want the secret word.
I was just thinking some people might not be there for the review. So.
Yeah, so let me do it. If I do it now, too, it makes sure that everyone watches the whole thing because they go to the end, they won't find the secret word. So that's good. So let me go back to the paint and I'll type it out. So the secret word, let me find. Haven't done this before, but I bet I can make it happen. There we go. So the secret word is thank you. So I want to thank you for going to these webinars and watching them. If you didn't see this, then you don't watch them. But so thank you for watching the webinars and doing all the work. This has been, I don't know if you know that, I don't know if I've said it, but this is the most successful class I've ever had, okay, and in online statistics. When I tell people that I've only lost one student in the whole class, people are in shock, because typically you lose 50%. And I've lost one out of, 25 or 24, something like that, 25. So you guys have been doing great. You're working hard. Hopefully you'll all pass. There's a chance of that, definitely. You just have to keep working hard. And so thank you for being a great class, because it has been a great class. Okay. Sometimes it's not so good, and this one's a good one. So I'm trying to think of anything I've done differently, and I really haven't. So I think it's you all that have been great. So there's your secret word, and just type it in, and that'll be your last secret word of the entire quarter. By the way, the assignment, both assignments are very easy this week. So the discussion post assignment, very simple, I promise. And also the chapter assignment's much shorter than usual. So you'll like them, I promise. Okay, but still, if you have questions, pop in the Q&A forum and I'll be happy to help you. So that's just a note. I want you to focus on studying for the final at this point. So I make it light this week. Okay, now go back. And take a look. Okay, so this is the regular home page. If you go to where it says comprehensive final and click that little arrow, it'll give you some things you can work on. So first thing is, there is, what is this? I don't think I want it. I'll have to look at it. This might have been a final from a long time ago, but I think I want these guys, because otherwise it'll go astray. Let me start out with the final structure, because that tells you more like what the final is about. The font is small, sorry about that, but you'll be able to make it big when you look at this. So what I've done is I've taken the final, just like I did with the midterm, and I have cut out the parts I don't want to tell you and left the rest. So the first one, the first question is match the following hypotheses and estimates with the appropriate test statistic or confidence interval. This is a lot of points and really important. There's an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I on this one. There's a lot of questions, and it's a matching question, basically. You have to, multiple choice, but lots of choices. So guessing is not going to be very productive, but don't leave it blank. You might as well guess if you have no idea. But instead, you really want to practice these, and I'll show you a tool to practice that I made. Any questions on this? So what happens is I give you all the different things we've done. So let me read through these because they're important. Confidence interval for a population mean. Confidence interval for a population proportion. Confidence interval for the difference between two population means. Confidence interval for the difference between two population proportions. Confidence interval for paired data dependent samples. A prediction for a single value of y for a fixed x. hypothesis test for a mean, population mean, hypothesis test for a population proportion, hypothesis test for the difference between two population means, hypothesis test for paired data, dependent samples, hypothesis test for the difference between two population proportions, chi-squared good as a fit, chi-squared test for independence, chi-squared homogeneity, and one-way ANOVA. One-way ANOVA is what we did today. And then I'm going to give you a scenario, and you have to write down which test you would use. You don't do the test, you just write down which one you would use for that scenario. To me, this is actually the most important part of the whole class in terms of the takeaways. Because if you can't do this, then later on, you're going to basically have to redo the entire class to be able to do research because you're going to be lost. If you can do this, then once you know, for example, if it's a hypothesis test, let's say it's a good as a fit test, then you can go research good as a fit, and in a few hours, you can relearn good as a fit. Any questions on that? So that is a really important problem. Problem 2, true or false? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J. Just to let you know, the midterm results for the true-false were dismal. It was the most challenging problem of the entire test. You need to practice this more as a group, okay? I'm not going to say every single student, but pretty much all of you, I don't think anybody got them all right. So all of you can do some work and do better on the true-falses. Okay, question 3. You'll see state the null alternative hypothesis, find test statistic, state your conclusion, interpret the p-value, and was it appropriate to the normal distribution? So that's a hypothesis test question. Question 4, that's a write down the sampling distribution, sketch the chart, answer the question, determine if the normality assumption was necessary. Where have you seen this problem before?
I can't read it.
Maybe I spoke too fast. So it says, write down the sampling distribution, sketch the chart, answer the question, and determine if the normality assumption was necessary.
Whether we had 31 in our sample size.
But where have you seen this question? Where'd you have to do this exactly question?
That was like 4 chapters ago. It was was it confidence interval?
Here's the hint, something high stakes. Can you remember?
Was it confidence interval or was it hypothesis? Are you asking which chapter?
On the midterm.
Oh.
On the midterm. So I strongly recommend going back to that midterm and redoing it. And the key is posted. So you can do that midterm and see if you still understand all of that.
I still didn't get mine. It did not come through as an attachment on that email.
Okay, but you can still look at the key.
Okay.
So the key is, because I did send the attachment, something had happened with it. Maybe your computer is blocking it. That happens sometimes because it thinks I'm a virus giver, but I'm not. But you could definitely look at the key to the midterm on the week 8 module. And you'll see the midterm, and then you'll get to do those problems. Okay. Question 5. I'm just telling you, it's a problem from chapter 3. Chapter 3 was probability. Question 6, confidence interval question. Okay, question 7, another hypothesis test question. There's a lot of hypothesis test questions in this test. We spent a lot of time doing it. Question 8 is a question from chapters 1, 2, 4, or 5. Question 9 is a chapter 12 question, regression line question. Question 10, more hypothesis testing. And question 11, yet another hypothesis test. We've done a lot of hypothesis tests. So this is weighted more towards the most recent stuff, just let you know that, because you haven't been tested on it yet. There are some things from older stuff, but it's more on the most recent than the older. Any questions on the structure? And I can zoom it if that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? Okay, so let me move away from the structure. I think I can just hit the back button, actually. There we go. And again, if we go to all of this, there's review applets. And this is something I want to show you. Maybe we'll do one or two. See comprehensive review. If you go practice classifying statistics problems, then we can practice. What do you think you want to click on if you want to review for the final? Which of the choices do you want?
Hypothesis tests.
That's it?
Select all?
Yeah, it's the final exam. We're trying to review everything, right? So select all and submit. There's hundreds of these that I put in. So let's read this one and see if you guys can get it. Is there a difference between the average amount of sleep people get if they sleep on their back, face down, or on the side? 90 of each type of sleepers were surveyed. So what kind of test is this?
Regression analysis.
Okay, I'll click regression analysis. And by the way, regression analysis is a prediction for a single value of x for a fixed y. See that little sad face? You know what that means?
Not right.
Yeah, not right. Okay? So notice we want to make a decision, not an estimate, not estimate a value. Okay? This is not a confidence interval or prediction interval. Please try again. So it's not regression analysis. So definitely read where the mistakes are. Any thoughts?
Oh, it's a chi or whatever.
Which one? There's three chi's. Chi-squared.
There's a difference between the average and
As good as a fit, test for independence, and test for homogeneity.
Goodness a fit.
Good as fit. Let's try it.
You know what? I give up.
Okay. No, don't give up. Don't give up. Notice that there are more than two variables here. Please try again.
So it's, I have to read it, and you're making me
When have we tested for more than two variables?
Face down and oh, we just did it in the ANOVAs.
ANOVA, yeah. And there it is.
You know what? I can't read that fast, so give me a break.
No, I'm not saying that you should not. What I'm saying is that you want to practice.
Yeah. I would have read it slower and more.
It's okay. It's okay.
I just really get nervous. I can't read that well. So, oh my gosh.
I'm not saying that you're faulty or anything like that. I'm just saying that what you want to do is go to this website.
This is cool.
And practice and practice and practice by yourself, not with me. Okay. You don't have to go fast. You do it at your own time. And
this is what it looks like when we do it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just clicked on it. This isn't like the special one for me.
Okay.
Okay. I have hundreds of these in here. How many should you do?
All of them.
Not necessarily. I would do them until you get them right. So if you're just like pretty soon just getting them right, like 5 in a row, you probably got it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
If you get them wrong, then you're not done yet. You need to keep practicing. So if you start getting them all right, then I would move on and study something else.
Is this for that first one that you said, the
Yes.
very first one? Oh my gosh.
This is the first question, but it won't be these exact, questions. There's hundreds of these, and I only have, a handful for you to try. A couple handfuls. Does that make sense?
This is awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so I made this, I programmed this. Took a lot of work, actually. Then I had to reprogram it because it did in Java, and Java's not supported. So now I reprogrammed it in JavaScript. So it should work. Should even work on a smartphone. Okay. Let me show you another review applet. And that's this one. I've showed you this one before, but you guys need to practice this because you didn't do well on the test for the midterm. This is the true falses. Select all. And submit. Okay, if the p-value is 0.003 and the level of significance alpha is 0.05, in a hypothesis test for a mean, then we accept the alternative hypothesis. True or false?
Fail to reject.
The rest of you, Sean,
Dominic, we reject. It's smaller, so we reject.
So true or false?
And accept, yes.
So yes, true?
Well, let me think. Okay.
But Sean, Dom, you can answer too.
Somebody else answer this one. Okay, wait, okay.
You guys have keyboards? You have voices?
It is smaller, so we reject.
Okay, so Sean says false. Well, we'll do it by majority.
We reject the null and we accept the yes, so we accept it.
Okay, you say true. So Dominique, you are going to be the tiebreaker.
If the p-value is...
You're doing all kinds of writing on it, which is interesting. Not sure what that says. Except, but is it true or false?
It's true.
Dominique, I'm asking you. We got one true, one false as a guess. True. So let's click true. Yes, it's true. P-value is less than alpha, so we accept the alternative hypothesis. By the way, when do you accept the null hypothesis?
Never.
Never. You never. Don't even think about it.
Because you don't want everybody to think you're an idiot. You already said that to us.
Yeah. Yeah, you never give in. Okay? Anyway, I have hundreds of these too. Practice these until you get good at them.
Okay.
Okay, and again, this should work on a smartphone, and it'll work on a computer, of course, too.
How did
Any
you
questions on this?
How did you get to the true and false one?
Same way. So I'll show you from Canvas. If you go to the very bottom and you see comprehensive final, it says review applets. Click on that. Hit review applets again. And then you'll see at the top, you got both.
Okay.
And you click whichever one you want to practice that day.
Okay.
Any questions on that? So I wanted to show you some of the ways we can practice. Okay, and if I go back, there's also a practice funnel. Again, this is not a study guide, it's a practice funnel. It's just some problems to try. You click that, and it'll give you a practice funnel. There's a key too. And I'm not going to go over every problem because that's something you should do. So there's a practice funnel I have available for you that you definitely should practice. Okay. And trying to think, that might be it. Yeah, that's it for those. What I recommend also, go back to the midterm exam and you will see where was it? Put it in here somewhere. Here we go, midterm 201, online W18 key. This is a full key to your midterm. I even made beautiful pictures. Any questions on that? So I recommend redoing the midterm. Try not to look at the key when you're doing it. So don't just read the key. Try doing the midterm and then check the key to see if you're getting the problems right. Any questions on that? Definitely something you should practice doing. The other thing I recommend doing is going back to the discussions. And for example, last week's discussion, which I haven't graded yet, but I will soon. I've graded a couple of them. Look at my post. And this is a detailed way of writing, which I'm going to expect you to do on a test. You can look at your own too, but definitely look at mine because mine is a model for what I expect. And you could do that for each of the weeks where you do this kind of assignment. Any questions at all? Any questions? So what I recommend recommend for the final is to do lots of practice, lots of writing out problems. Of course, practice the true falses and practice the matching, but also practice writing out problems, problem after problem after problem. And there's lots of resources that you can do that. There's the book, there's the problems from the weekly assignments, there's the discussion forum assignments, there's the practice test, there's the midterm. So if you did everything, you'll get really tired. But definitely practice. And the midterm again, and the final must be taken by Wednesday of the 28th. Okay, that's not flexible. That way I can grade them and make sure that I've turned in the grades. So I will open it up. We're pretty much close to the end. This is, again, the last webinar. And hopefully the webinars helped. I noticed on the midterm X credit, a lot of you felt like the webinar was one of the most valuable parts of the class. So hopefully all of you are learning from the webinars. But make sure you watch the videos, regular videos too. Okay, and read the book and all that. So are there any questions about anything? And I will be looking at the Q&A forums from now until Wednesday. After Wednesday, the class is over, by the way. And then I stopped looking at all the forums because the class is over. So I'll post your grade, but that's about it. I'm not going to send out anything other than the grade to the admissions records. So just note the class is over. If you send me an email and say hi, I might say hi back. But I stopped looking, and pretty soon you're not even able to get into the class anymore because that gets taken off by the college. So that's just a note. You're not going to see much after Wednesday. But from now till Wednesday, I will be checking throughout the days. Okay, whenever I'm not teaching or whatever, or sleeping. So any questions? It's close to 7 o'clock. I'll be happy to answer questions if you have them. If not, we can say goodnight, and goodnight for the class, actually, yeah, for webinar part of it. So are there any questions at all?
Nope. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you. And again, thanks for all your hard work. I have high hopes for this class in terms of the grades.
That's it. Good night.
All right, good night, Sean.
Thank you.
Night, and Dom, are you back? Good night.
Night.
Okay, good night, Dominic. And for all of you watching this as an archived webinar, thanks for watching. Don't forget to put the secret word in. It's in the middle somewhere. And post on the Q&A forum. And good luck on the final exam. It's been great working with y'all. Have a great one.